various facilities with differing degrees of security. The primary purpose of ADX Florence is to securely house the most dangerous and violent criminals in the United States. It serves as a containment unit for criminal leaders of violent gangs, as well as domestic and international terrorists from major organizations like Al-Qaeda. Notable inmates include Zacharias Moussaoui, the only person convicted in a civilian court for the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and Djokhar Tsarnaev, who played a role in the Boston Marathon bombings. With its highly controlled environment,
Moeten we scheren in één beweging. Met Gillette Labs. Niet tevreden, geld terug.
Kleine dingen. Islo. Eet goed, oud goed.
ADX Florence is considered an early example of what would become the Supermax model. Inmates at ADX Florence have little to no time outside of their cells, very few activities, and minimal contact with other humans. The prison is specifically designed to keep every occupant in near total solitary confinement, making it the only facility of its kind. The physical layout of ADX Florence contributes to its high level of security. The facility covers 21 acres of land and is predominantly above ground, with a subterranean corridor linking the cell blocks to the lobby. Each Supermax prison cell is constructed almost entirely of poured concrete and contains a desk, stool, bed, toilet, shower, and sink. The windows, measuring only 4 inches by 4 feet, are designed to prevent inmates from knowing their specific location within the complex, making escape virtually impossible. In addition to the strict confinement, ADX Florence employs a 3-year program that gradually socializes inmates with other prisoners and staff. During the first year, inmates are confined to their cells for 23 hours a day. Over time, good behavior can earn them more outside time, and for the most fortunate, a potential transfer back to a less secure prison may be possible. However, even in their last year, prisoners are still confined to their cells from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., with meals delivered through a slot in their steel cell door. The daily solitary confinement style in ADX must be the reason El Chapo has desperately turned to putting pen to paper. The effects of long-term solitary confinement on the human mind are profound and disturbing. Studies have shown that the human brain relies on social interaction for its healthy development and functioning. Without regular social contact, the mind begins to deteriorate, leading to a range of psychological issues. Depression and anxiety are common. Among inmates subjected to long-term solitary confinement, the constant isolation and lack of stimulation can lead to a deep sense of hopelessness and despair. The mind becomes consumed by negative thoughts, and the weight of loneliness becomes unbearable. But the psychological effects go beyond depression and anxiety. The New York Times tells the disturbing story of an ADX inmate named Jack Powers, who was jailed for robbery and sent to prison after escaping from another one. The isolation sent Powers spiraling into insanity. He cut off his earlobes, chewed through a finger, and even smashed his head open in an attempt to inject his brain with bacteria-laden fluid. These extreme acts of self-harm are a testament to the profound psychological distress experienced by those confined within the ADX. Hallucinations and psychotic breaks are also common among inmates subjected to long-term solitary confinement. The mind, deprived of external stimuli, begins to create its own reality. In the absence of human contact, the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined become blurred. Inmates may see and hear things that aren't there, further exacerbating their already fragile mental state. The effects of isolation linger even after inmates are released from solitary confinement. These inmates develop a condition called the Security Housing Unit Syndrome, which is characterized by paranoia, panic attacks, aggression, and psychotic symptoms. The damage inflicted by long-term solitary confinement is long-lasting and can continue to haunt individuals long after they have left the ADX. Apart from the risk of spiraling into insanity, El Chapo must be frustrated as he is not able to break himself out of jail. It is important to note that El Chapo has successfully broken out of jail in the past, not once, but twice. The security measures at ADX Florence are unparalleled, meaning El Chapo may be getting frustrated since he has finally met his Waterloo. ADX Florence is equipped with a multitude of security features designed to ensure the safety of both staff and inmates. Apart from that, it is fortified to make sure inmates cannot escape. The prison boasts a
compensate for any that failed. Unfortunately, the rockets started ripping themselves off the wheels and shooting across the testing field. This happened multiple times, almost killing the observers of the tests. It was decided the Great Panjandrum would be too much of a liability in the field of battle and was discarded. Throughout the history of warfare, there have been a series of delivery methods for dropping bombs. However, there are a few that you probably never knew existed. In World War II, a surgeon named Lytle Adams came up with the odd idea of attaching bombs to animals. His plan was to fasten little bombs to bats and have them infiltrate enemy bases. The bats would then roost in the buildings and the timed bombs would go off, bringing the structure's roof crumbling down. Bats seem like the perfect delivery method since they can carry more than their body weight in cargo, they're plentiful, and they can be relatively cheap to breed if more are needed. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was so intrigued by the idea that he gave it the go-ahead, and the bat bombs were tested. The military collected hundreds of Mexican free-tailed bats and recruited Louis Spicer, the inventor of napalm, to design the detonation packs that would be secured to the creatures. As the war progressed, United States Command realized that the bat bombs would work exceptionally well in Japanese cities where many of the structures were made out of wood, cloth, and paper. This meant that once the bat bomb detonated, it would not...
Please stop me. Oh. Thank you.
not just destroy the structure itself, but could cause a fire to sweep through an entire neighborhood. Luckily for the bats, this project was never implemented. During a test in Carlsbad, New Mexico, one of the bat bombs got loose and sought shelter under a fuel tank at the military base. Later that day, the bomb went off, blowing up the bat and everything else in the vicinity of the fuel tanker. After several failed training exercises and the deployment of the atomic bombs in Japan, the bats were retired from military service as they were no longer needed. The Japanese had their own bomb deployment system, and that was as big of a failure as Adams's bat bombs. However, it did lead to the only deaths in the continental U.S. as a result of an enemy weapon. In 1944, the Japanese deployed 9,000 fugos, or fire balloons, over the Pacific Ocean. Attached to each balloon were a 35-pound high-explosive and 8 firebombs. The Japanese military planned for the balloons to float along the jet stream until they reached the coast of the United States, where they would descend and detonate. The ideal situation for the Japanese would have been the fugo creating massive wildfires, sending the West Coast into chaos. The crazy thing is that around 389 balloons made it to the United States, which is a small number compared to the amount launched, but still not insignificant. When the balloons landed, almost all of them failed to detonate or cause any damage. In fact, 2 of the fugos actually floated back to Japan and fell on their own islands. Sadly, one fugo did find its way to Oregon, where it fell to the forest floor. 5 kids and a pregnant Sunday school teacher came across the Japanese bombs right as it went off. Everyone in the group was killed, making it the only place on the American continent where death resulted from enemy action in World War II. However, killing 5 kids and a Sunday school teacher and her unborn baby was not the outcome that the Japanese had hoped for with their 9,000 fire balloons. They were quickly retired as failed weapons, and a year later, Japan surrendered, ending World War II. The weird Nazi weapon called the Windkanone